Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday session with Kase Filters UK. My name is Ruth Taylor. I am delighted to be speaking tonight to Julian Baird. I've been very much looking forward to speaking to Julian, actually, for the last few weeks, and I'm going to be introducing you to him in just a couple of minutes. But first up, welcome. If you've never been here before, this is a really simple format. We're here for about half an hour or so, just asking Julian some questions, and what's always fantastic, obviously, is if you guys ask questions in the chat as well. There's a live chat box there on YouTube. I'm sure most of you know how to use it. Just pop your questions in there and they come through to us. There's a little bit of a delay, just usually a few seconds or so, but shove them on in there and we will ask those through the next 30 minutes as well. If you want to watch this again after we've finished, or if you've missed it, or you want to share it with anybody, it'll be available after the stream ends, just a few minutes later on the Kase Filters UK YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out when you are done. I think that's it for kind of housekeeping-y stuff. So let's get started. There's people pouring into the chat as well. Julesy baby, says Nick Livesey. You got some friends in here. I think.
Excellent to hear.
Yeah, Chris is here. Chris Sale's here. John Toth is here. Chris Nowell. We've got a few people in here, so got questions pouring in already.
Those £5 checks will be in the post.
Exactly. The old £5 notes will be, bit of cash. But anyway, Julian, Highlander in Exile is what I think I'm going to call you. You are actually a Highlander, but you're based down in Devon. Photographer, YouTuber, and prolific blogger, I think. We're coming up, I think last count, are you coming up on nearly 300 blogs at this stage?
It can't be far off it. It's well over 260. Yeah, when I started my blog, I made a commitment not to be one of those people that started a blog and then kind of just stopped. So yeah, every week since I started for almost 5 years ago, I've always managed to hit the target of posting something every week. So yeah. Yeah,
no, good for you. I mean, it's quite the archive. I was having a wee look at it a few days ago, and loads of really, really good stuff. And I've actually got a few quotes, which I'm going to pull out over the next half hour or so, because you're a good writer as well as a photographer. But I think you said you started photography, is it 15 years ago? You got your first camera. Why don't you just tell us a wee bit about how you actually got started?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have one of those classic photographer stories where, my dad gave me a camera or I picked up a camera and all of a sudden I was Ansel Adams and my life had changed. It was very much a gradual progression. I've always had cameras, even since I was a sort of kid, such as film cameras, just to point and shoot stuff. And then as I got older in life, when I was still living in Scotland and I was walking the mountains, I'd go out and take my camera, but again, just kind of snapshots. But it wasn't really until I moved down to Devon that I started taking my photography a bit more seriously. I mean, nothing actually to do with moving down to Devon. It just happened to be that was the time that I did it. And that's when I got my first digital SLR. And then, I think certainly in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, I've been taking it very seriously indeed. But there was no transformative moment. It's just been a kind of gradual dominating my life eventually. Now it's virtually the only thing I think about.
Yeah, I mean, you say dominating your life, but you're not actually full-time, are you? I think you got a day job as well. Is that right?
I've got a day job. I'm an IT consultant, so I work 5 days a week. So photography, I try and shoehorn in between work and family life. So I guess, if you read my blog or you look at my videos, it looks like I'm out all the time. But that's actually not close to reality at all. So I can maybe get out a couple of times a week, and it's normally, that's a good thing about landscape photography, is you tend to do it in the unsociable hours. So that's why sunrise is one of my favorite times to go, because I can go out, do a bit of photography, come back, see the family, start work, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, out extremely early and then working a full day, and then it's a landscape photographer's life. I think if you enjoy getting out super early, then you can make it work, can't you?
I enjoy getting out super early, but by about sort of lunchtime, less keen on the idea. It's like, what was I doing? Getting up very early in the morning when there's nobody about, it really is the most special time of day, and you watch the sun come up. Not today, but on good days, it's special, and it does really make it worth it. And then you go home with a great sense of satisfaction that you went out and you capture some photographs, and you go back and have breakfast and coffee and stuff like that. It's a really good way to start the day.
Do you remember your first camera, Julian?
The very, very first camera I think I had as a kid was some sort of film camera. Franca, I think it was called. But really, my first kind of, I wouldn't call it serious camera, but the first camera I really started taking pictures with was a Minolta, the Image A1, I think it was.
Okay.
That was basically a point and shoot, but it was a Nikon D80 that I got back in 2000 and whatever it was when it came out. That's when I got my first serious camera, and I've been pretty well been Nikon ever since then.
Okay. I mean, as I said before, I was reading your blog, and you describe your landscape photography style as classic or traditional. You say you like the open landscapes. What is it about the open landscapes as opposed to kind of maybe the more intimate kind of style of shots that are out there as well? That kind of, what is it that attracts your eye? Is it just the grand scape of things, or,
I think it is. I mean, I'm a fan of photography, so I like a whole lot of different types of genre of photography. I mean, I've got my bookshelf there. It's got loads of books, and it's not just landscape photography books. There's portraiture, there's music, there's all sorts of different types of photography. So I'm a fan of photography first of all, but for my own stuff that I like to shoot, it's a grand vista. It's a big wide open vista, and I think that's perhaps been influenced by growing up in Scotland, where I was surrounded by big views, and equally when I'm living here down in Devon, I'm out in Dartmoor. It's big view, so it's just what I'm used to. It's what I see, and that's what I like to capture.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, I think, on your website that you do, is it live music photography as well, talking about all sorts of genres, which is a big departure from landscape. I know lots of people who like landscapes, they love the great outdoors, and that's kind of the draw of landscape photography for them. What is it about live music that kind of turns you on?
Well, I mean, the live music photography kind of started out when I was working with a guy, and he was running a music blog sort of website, and he was going to gigs, and he was taking pictures, and I said, I've got a camera, I'll give that a go, with no previous experience whatsoever in live music photography. But
I mean, it's tricky.
It's well hard.
It's well hard. Anything really indoors like that, the light is awful, and
the light's awful. The light's constantly changing, people in shadow, it's moving about. It's quite a difficult form of photography to do, but I enjoy doing it. And also, especially during the winter months when you don't have those long hours, and I'm working during the day, I found it as how to get my photography fix in the evening, because what else are you going to do in the dark? So I go out there. But the one thing that has really benefited my photography is you really get to know your camera, because what you're not doing is looking at the buttons and trying to figure out, which one's the aperture. Everything becomes muscle memory. And that actually translates quite well into the landscape, because when you're out there, you're not thinking about your camera anymore. You're thinking about the composition and the light, and all those changes to the settings all become from muscle memory. So it actually makes that a little bit easier to do.
Yeah, get to know your camera first. It's that whole thing.
Get to know your camera first, exactly,
Yeah. One of your blogs that I was reading a few days ago, you were talking about, you were shooting a patch of woods, basically, and I love one particular where you used to describe them. You said, invigorating and peaceful at the same time. And to me, looking through kind of your gallery of work, that is a very, very good description, I think, of all your shots, of your landscape shots. It's invigorating but peaceful at the same time. I mean, style-wise and shooting conditions-wise, what's your kind of favourite? I know you say you like to excite people through your landscape imagery. Yeah. What's your favourite kind of conditions for being out and shooting?
Well, I hate to be a bit, I like a glorious sunrise. I know it's almost a bit cliche these days, but I do like a dramatic sky, I think, is what, where you get that heavy sky and the sun comes up above the horizon and it illuminates the underside of the cloud. I really like that kind of dramatic event. And the reason I think I like that is because that's not something you get to see during the day. If you go out during the day, you can get very special and unique conditions. There's no doubt about it. But fewer people are out there to experience that. And I like to go out in those times when people aren't going to be out and capture something that other people just perhaps don't see.
Yeah, let them see it. Andrew is asking in the chat, as an IT consultant, do you find photography provides mental health relief away from the coalface of the day job?
Everything away from the IT job.
Everything away from the coalface. Yeah.
Everything. Absolutely. Yeah, it is my escape. I mean, I got into landscape photography because of I guess it's that love of being outdoors, and having the motivation to get out with the camera helps me get outdoors. And as I said a bit earlier on, just actually being up on a hillside out in Dartmoor, just waiting for the sun to come up. It's extremely peaceful. It's extremely exciting as well. And yeah, it does offer a lot of release. It's quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Seascapes versus landscapes. This is another question in on the chat for you. Do you have a preference?
That's like asking me whether I like Coke or Pepsi. You know, both is good depending on the scenario, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I probably shoot more landscapes, but that's not anything.
It's not because you like them better.
It's not because I like them better. No, I like seascapes. I've got a couple of. I know we're probably going to talk about favorite locations later, but yeah, I've got a couple. I'll shoot either.
Yeah, I mean, talking of seascapes, there was a shot I was looking at the other day, Kynance Cove, I think down in Cornwall. It's probably not how you pronounce it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But as a shot, it really stood out. I mean, obviously it's like pin sharp, but you like to use a bit of a long exposure, obviously, when you're doing this. And it just looked very much like a painting. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I mean, just talking artistically, is there anybody that inspires you artistically when you go out and shoot? Or is it just something that you kind of, do you envision it in your own head and you go out there and try and do that?
Yeah, I think I envisioned it in my own head. Like I said, I read a lot of photography books, so I get a lot of that kind of inspiration by looking at other people's works, and like I say, not just the types of photograph that I would like to take. You can get a lot of inspiration and ideas by looking at very different genres of landscape photography. But yeah, I mean, obviously I try and take shots similar to the people that do inspire me. So that's people like Ross Hodinett, for example, who's a landscape photographer who lives down here as well. He takes the pictures of the style that I very much like to take. So I guess he's quite inspirational to my photography work as well. And to a certain extent outside the photography sphere, people that are kind of inspire and influence, people like Nick Livesey actually. And even though he is a photographer, it's his ethos about the way he approaches the landscape and the culture and learning about, because he lives in Snowdonia, he's very much enveloped himself into that lifestyle and he's learned about it. And that's something that kind of inspires me. And that's something I'm doing with Dartmoor at the moment, is not just going out there to take the pictures just because they look nice, but actually trying to understand what that landscape is and how it's been impacted by man over history and what all the names mean and stuff like that. So yeah, I can get inspired from in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, he goes very in depth, Nick, doesn't he? I remember talking to him a few weeks ago, one of these sessions, and he's getting right into everything from, I'm no horticulturist or whatever it is, but he's getting right into the the leaves and all the rest of it, and just really trying to bring the history and the depth and the roots of it out.
Well, yeah, it's understanding the people and the landscape, because I guess, as you said, you can't claim to love something if you don't understand it.
I like that. Yeah,
and I claim to love Dartmoor, and I do, but I think I do need to get a sort of deeper understanding of it.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris would like to know, Chris Sale, Jules, do you have any photography ambitions? I don't know if this is tongue in cheek or not, but do you have any photography ambitions? Chris would like to know.
Yeah, I've got one ambition. It perhaps sounds a little bit vain, but I have this ambition that I want to be in the Landscape Photographer of the Yearbook. It's been a driving ambition for me for years, because I remember. When I was really starting to get into landscape photography, I started buying the competition books, and I go down to London and I look at the exhibition and I look at those pictures, and I was really inspired. And I thought, I've seen pictures. I thought I could do that with a little bit of practice and put skill in those type of pictures. So I've always wanted to get in the book. Never managed it, but yeah, it might be a bit of a vain ambition, but that is definitely an ambition.
Absolutely. Of mine. Have you entered this year?
I entered there and I didn't get very far. Again, unfortunately, but one step. I keep trying. I try not to let it get me down. Yeah.
May I recommend Scotland's Photographer of the Year, which I'm helping judging on this year.
You would recommend that one, wouldn't you?
Feel free. There'll be no bias on my end. I probably shouldn't say that. Anyway, Rod would like to know, Julius, has the experience with Fuji made you value your current setup more?
Oh, so yeah, what Rod will be, I got hold of the Fujifilm GFX 100S medium format camera. I got a loan from Fuji for that, and I spent the weekend with it. Has it made me value my own camera system more? I don't know.
No, you want the Fuji.
My camera system. I don't want the Fuji. No, actually, I don't. I think if I had to pay for it myself, definitely not, because I think that the the gap between my current system, which is a Nikon Z7, and the Fujifilm, you're paying for 3-4 times the value in camera system, but you don't necessarily get 3-4 times the up scale in quality. It's diminishing returns. You buy something cheap, you buy something medium price. There's quite a big gap in terms of the quality, but that gap gets smaller and smaller. But the amount of money you spend goes up and up. So it's quite good. It was quite a good experience of actually having to use the camera, because at the back of the mind, you're always thinking, I need that camera.
Yeah.
I could sell a house or a child or something, and I could fund that camera. But I think it's made me realize that I'm perfectly happy with the Nikon.
Yeah, no, I like it. However, if somebody gifted you one, I'm sure you'd be
if someone gave
more
me
than
one, I'd be
happy
quite
to
happy
take
to use
that.
it. No, not a problem.
I love it. Post-processing, you describe, as most landscape photographers do, your preference is kind of a light touch in post. I mean, is that, what's your kind of normal process when it comes back after taking an image? Is it minutes you spend on it? Do you leave it and then go back to it? How's your process?
It's generally minutes. it's very light touch. I find that I try and do as much on location as I can. So that we, when I have to use filters and stuff like that. So it's not that I don't like post-processing. I just don't want to spend time doing it. And I think I have a measure that if it's taken me more than 5 minutes, apart from cleaning out dust spots, that generally indicates that I'm trying to polish something that shouldn't be polished.
Yeah.
I think just with the type of shots that I take, I want them to look quite natural, even though some of the conditions might be quite spectacular. I don't want to over push it and over saturate it. So it's really the top half of the Lightroom sliders. I've got a very good idea, but once I've made my basic adjustments there about how much time I'm going to spend on it. But I'm not a big
get it right in camera, and then it just takes you maybe a couple of minutes to tweak on the other end.
Do more in camera. I never use the phrase get it right in camera, because people get upset with that.
Why is that?
Well, because if I say I like to do it right in camera, that possibly indicates to other people that they're doing it wrong. So if, for example, I use a graduated filter to balance the exposure between the sky, and I say I want to do this the right way, then people who do perhaps like to do exposure bracketing, that indicates that maybe they're doing it the wrong way. So I would say I personally like to do as much in camera or on location as I can, rather than I like to get it right in camera first.
Yeah, I like that. I like your style. Simon would like to know, how much time do you spend on photography and YouTube per week? I'm assuming he means editing YouTube wise, as opposed to sitting watching. Maybe not though. That's from Simon Booth.
Oh, hi Simon. That kind of depends. I mean, photography, actually out in the field shooting, I probably get to spend probably 2 to 3 hours, which some people might find surprising, again, given the amount of content that I put out. But then you probably, if I'm doing a video, it probably takes longer. I mean, it takes quite a long time to edit a video, and then put all the social media posts together and get the tags right. It's quite a time-consuming exercise. But yeah, photography-wise, it's only a few hours a week, and it's very rare. Maybe about once a year, I'll go away and maybe spend a few days doing photography.
Do you record everything that you go out and shoot, or are you happy to go out and just with your camera kind of leave the recording camera behind and just, or is the draw to actually go out and do everything at the same time?
I leave the video camera behind quite a lot, actually. Yeah, I don't always like to take it. I've got a dog, so sometimes I go out with the dog and just take pictures instead, because trying to do video and walk the dog and take pictures at the same time it's a recipe for the. Yeah, it's exhausting, and the dog's not very patient. So quite often I'll leave it back. I don't like to video everything. Sometimes it's just nice to go out with the camera and take pictures. Yeah,
there's quite a few photographers seem to go out with dogs, and I wonder, does it streamline the process? Is there a reason behind everybody kind of going out now with their dogs, or is it just walk the dog, go out with your camera, to kill two birds with one stone?
I use a dog as an excuse to go. I'm just going to take the dog for a walk, but I take my camera with me just in case. It gets me into less trouble. I only just got the dog recently. Actually, he's 2 years old now, so he's just good company. Just good. Again, being an outdoors person, enjoy being outdoors. He's a little spaniel, so he's mad for the outdoors. So we get on quite well, and we're both well suited for the Dartmoor weather. He doesn't mind if he gets wet.
Bit of rain. One of your quotes from your blog that I love, one of the recent ones, just talking about memorable moments. It says this: "What made the day was spending time with a mate, chatting, eating and drinking. If I hadn't had the company of a friend, I don't think I would have spent the drive home feeling it had been a good day out. Landscape photography can be a solitary pastime, but never underestimate the power of company to turn a challenging day into a fun day." And I love that. And I mean, just talking memorable moments, is it for you, is it being out with a friend, with a mate and having that company, or do you have any kind of particular memorable moments that kind of stick out for you in particular?
I mean, it's funny you read that back, because that sounds like something I wouldn't. I know I wrote it.
You wrote it very well.
It was someone else's.
I like that. I like that. That's why I took a copy of that.
I've never heard anyone read it back to me. So, anyway, I mean, I like both. I mean, I enjoy other people's companies. I love a good chat. I expect a few people in the live chat there that I've press ganged in to support me, that they'll know that I like a good chat. So I do like company, and I think, you know, it can help really with the motivation about getting out. You know, sometimes you just can't be bothered. And you know, if someone else is going, you know, that even if the photography absolutely stinks, you've still had a chance to catch up with a mate, and having company has saved a few photographic trips from being an utter waste of time to being something that's been very enjoyable.
I mean, speaking of mates, Chris is in the chat again. Chris Sales says, what's your top tip for somebody wanting to get more exposure, excuse the pun, for their photography?
That's a very good question. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it now. I think the best thing, you need to have a home for your work. I think that's probably one of the most important bits is to and that's really what I mean by that, as a website. Every photographer needs that. So Instagram and Facebook and all these platforms, they're all very useful, but they're all very fickle in terms of their visibility. Yeah. So I mean, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, but I use those platforms to direct people back to my website, back to my home, because that's never going to change. People can always go there and always find me. So I think having a website and keeping it up to date, and that's one of the reasons why I started the blog, was it was a reason to keep the website going. It was always getting updated. So I think having a home, and then also trying to get your work published, and it's generally easier than you think these days. Getting into magazines, for example, they're always looking for submissions and stuff like that. So you should always check out the submission pages of magazines and just keep on submitting, and into photography competitions as well. Yeah,
interesting. I've not actually heard anybody say that about giving submissions into magazines. You kind of assume it's one of those very difficult things to get into, but they welcome submissions.
I've been in a few, so it can't be that difficult. So, yeah, I mean, I've been in an outdoor photography magazine a number of times. So, and that was just through the standard submissions process. So, yeah, there's definite scope for doing that.
Yeah, and have a website, as you say, have a home. I mean, speaking of your website, I haven't seen it, but I know you've produced an interactive landscape map, which you're very enthusiastic about, and it looks fantastic. I mean, the amount of places that you've been to, and the same amount of, not the same, you've been to several different places in one location.
Yeah.
And it looks like a fantastic resource, which I know people who are signed up to your newsletter get a hold of. But just location-wise, right, do you have favourite locations? I know obviously around you where you are, there'll be places to go back to a lot of the time. But even further than that, are there places that are just kind of places that you really like to be? I know you've been up to Harris, you've been up in Scotland, of course, as well.
Oh, I go back to Harris in a heartbeat if I could. I absolutely loved Harris, and Luskintyre Beach. It was just it's one of the most amazing places I've ever been to. I mean, obviously being Scottish, being a fan of being in Scotland, but it's a very different landscape in Harris. You've got the mountains and the beaches, and it's quite diverse. And I'd love to go back there. But I mean, I think I really love shooting the Highlands. It's a funny thing, because like when I was growing up in the Highlands, or even living in Scotland, I had a much less interest in photography. But now that I don't live there, I've got this craze to do landscape photography, and it's really hard to get back up to Scotland, which is more difficult. But I mean, in terms of locations, I've got a couple of real favourites down here. I like to shoot Belstone Common on Dartmoor. That's my go-to landscape location, because you go up there, it's a bit of a walk, but you've got these 360-degree views. So you're almost guaranteed that as long as something's happening somewhere, there's a shot to take. And then Dawlish Warren Beach, which is just down the road for me in Exeter. It's a superb seascape location. And, you know, you think, well, beach, sand, groins, you know, how much variation can you possibly get from one location? But you'd be surprised. Every time I go there, I get a slightly different images, slightly different conditions, everything's slightly different. So I find that it's one of my favorite locations to go. Plus it's really close. So
yeah,
it's a 5 a.m. start. You don't have to.
It's one of those things, isn't it, when you find a location like that, which just seems to have limitless possibilities. I mean, if you could choose between maybe going out for one day and discovering someplace new, or finding a location like you've discussed and actually being able to go back there again and again, what would your preference be there?
I think I'd probably go for a location I can go back to, because you can always get the most of it. It's as much as I really love visiting new locations, but you know, the time frame, and if you get bad weather, you know, you can never quite make the most of it. So I'm quite happy. I'm very, very fortunate down here in Exeter. I mean, Devon, we've got miles and miles of the southwest coast path. Got Dartmoor, Exmoor. You know, I'm spoilt for choice down here. So while I do like to travel further afield, I don't think I'm ever going to get bored of the locations that I've got here.
Is there anywhere, I mean, out of the UK that you kind of got a kind of bucket list location in your head that you'd just really like to get to?
In the UK?
Outside the UK.
Oh, outside yes, definitely. Yeah. The Faroe Islands.
The Faroes, really?
I'm desperate to go to the Faroe Islands.
Why?
I think it's a bit like Scotland on steroids. I just love the ruggedness of it. I mean, I remember the first picture I saw of it. I don't know what the name of the location is, but it had a lake up in a high cliff top, and then the cliff just dropped off into the sea, and it just looked like something out of like Lord of the Rings or something like that. And then you just look at all these mountains and lakes. It just looks absolutely fascinating. I do have a trip booked in, I think April next year.
Okay.
So assuming that everything
Fingers
goes to
crossed.
plan in terms of I've had my double jabs, so I'm halfway there. I'm really keen to go to the Faroe Islands. I just love the look of it, just all that ruggedness and mountains and water and stuff.
Rugged water,
a dream location.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I've not heard that one before, so yeah, that's I'm gonna have to Google that later and see exactly what it looks like. You kind of imagine, is it Icelandy? Kind of looks a bit like Iceland.
It's kind of Icelandy. It's got that kind of very rugged landscape look about it. I mean, Iceland's got its very own unique features, but so does the Faroe Islands. But yeah, it's stuck out in the middle of the Atlantic, a small group of islands, very small population, but it's increasing in popularity. So that's the only thing.
Get out there before it gets too much of a honeypot. Yeah. Top tips, advice, wisdom, whatever you want to call it. I mean, again, looking at your blog recently, one of the things you're talking about was weather. You're talking about, you know, having to travel a certain amount of distance if the weather's not looking good, and it's not always worth it. But in another one, you also talk about taking more risks with the weather and not quite, you know, not pinning all your hopes on that. I mean, that's advice in itself. But do you have any top tips or anything that you've kind of learnt in the past 15 years or so that you think would be just useful to pass on to someone who's maybe starting out a bit earlier on in the journey?
Yeah, I think if you're starting out, the absolute number one thing you can do is just get out and practice. Don't try and wait for the good conditions. My photography improved when I started shooting more. It's just about having the dedication. You don't have to do what I do and get up at 3 a.m. and stay out till 11 at night. You know, that's not it. It's just about learning how to use your camera and just going out and taking as many pictures as you possibly can. It's all about practice. And bear in mind that when you're looking at people's social feeds, you're getting a very cut down view of what they're happening. I mean, on my blog, it's one of the things when I try to do my blog, so I always share the pictures from my shoots, regardless of whether they're 5-star images or not, because I wanted to portray a kind of realistic thing about landscape photography, that it's not all 5-star images. Far from it. You know, there's a lot of slogs, there's a lot of practice, a lot of wet days, rubbish days, all that kind of stuff. So it's just don't try and wait for those great conditions. Just go out, practice with your camera, because what you want to do, when you do get presented with those epic conditions or the conditions that appeal to you, you're not trying to figure out how to use your camera or how do I do this or how do I do that. You'll be prepared to do it, and you'll make a much more success out of those times you do get those good conditions.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I love to hear photographers say is just that, is the fact that, I've got 500 bad images on the, inside my camera, and I've shown you the one or the two that are good, because it is so very easy. Like you say, you see the social media feeds and you assume everyone's getting those shots first time and they're just that good. But no, look at a memory card and the amount that have been, not what you want, or out of focus, or something's not quite right. I think it's encouraging for people who are starting out to realize that it's not all, amazing shot first time round.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I went up to Bodmin Moor during the week there to visit a new location. I had high hopes for some good light. Really dramatic location. I've never seen sort of rock formations like it, but the light was completely grey and flat. But I've still completed the story in the video. I'm still going to publish the pictures because that's what happened.
Absolutely.
That's a risk approach. I'm not going to wait until fabricate some sort of video and wait for the conditions to be epic. That's what happened, and that's life as a landscape photographer.
Yeah, no, I love it. Favorite case filter, Jules? Do you have one?
Oh, that's an easy one. It's a circular polarizer.
It's between the Polarizer's a popular one, yeah.
It's always on the camera. In fact, I've ordered a second one as well, so I'm going to have two, so I don't have to swap them over. That's how much I love that filter. It rarely comes off the lens, so I'm going to get one for each lens now.
I like it. Rod would like to know, just speaking on filters, any tips on keeping filters clean, making them easy to attach and store, all to remove the baddie, or to being bothered to use filters? Any tips on keeping them clean? Let's go with that. Use a lens cloth.
Yeah, I'm not particularly precious about my camera equipment. I mean, I'm not to say that I'm not careless. Mm-hmm. I'm not careless with it, but I'm not precious with it either. So I think when it comes to keeping it clean, the case filters, especially, this is not a case plug, but I did find moving from my previous filter system to the case filter system a lot easier to keep clean, especially when you get water on them. I just use a lens cloth, and I just wipe it down, and that tends to be all that's really needed. It doesn't tend to get much more difficult than that. They're quite easy, the case filters, to keep clean. Yeah,
and just store them in your usual.
Just got a little, store them in the bag. Yep.
Yeah. Gareth would like to know: has camping changed your attitude to photography?
Is that Gareth Danks?
It's Gareth Danks. Is this an in joke? There's a lot.
No, it's not an in joke.
No.
Gareth is quite a keen wild camper, and we had a bit of a running joke for a little while that he was going to convince me to go wild camping with him. I like my soft beds and fluffy pillows and a full cooked breakfast in the morning. A bit less so with the wild camping, but he did manage to talk me into it twice, I might add. So yeah, I mean, I definitely get the value in wild camping, because it gives you two opportunities to shoot the same scene without having to either stay up really late and descend a mountain in the dark, or ascend a mountain in the dark. So I mean, it's something I definitely want to do more of. I mean, I was hoping to go up and see Gareth last year, but obviously with the lockdown, because I've been up to his neck of the woods twice, and to the Brecon Beacons, and didn't see it either time. So I'm hoping third time lucky. Every time I go to the Brecon Beacons, I've never seen the Brecon Beacons, even though I've been many times before. So I think it has changed my view, and I would like to do more of it.
Neil would like to know if you got any goals or ambitions on photographing Dartmoor.
Yeah, I do actually. So this goes back to talking about some of the things that Nick Livesey said about understanding the environment. I've started a very long-term project. Well, long-term for me, because us YouTubers, we go from one video to the next. So I've kind of embarked on a long-term project for Dartmoor, not just about photographing it, but also, again, like I said, understanding it, the geology, the people that work there, the flora, the fauna, and trying to expand my horizons on Dartmoor. So that's what I'm going to be working on over the next probably at least a year, I think, especially because I'm doing it part-time. Yeah,
brilliant. We mentioned live music photography earlier on. I mean, besides photography, do you have time for any other hobbies, or is that the whole thing for you?
Well, up until very recently, I did have a pilot's license, so I was I used to do a bit of flying. But that having all these interesting activities that are dependent on the weather does become a bit of a nightmare when it comes to the scheduling. So after about, I think I've been flying for about 10 years. I just recently knocked that on the head, which I'm a little bit upset about, but it was the right thing to do, which pretty well leaves me with just photography, and cycling is the other big thing that I like to do. Okay. So I've got a road bike, and I do a lot of road cycling. So that's what I try and do during the day, try and keep my fitness up.
You can get a drone, maybe best of both worlds, take pictures from up high and
I've got a drone
on the ground. You've got a drone?
Yeah, I've got a drone. The problem with Dartmoor is you're not allowed to fly it over common land, which is most of the land in Dartmoor. So it doesn't get used as much as I'd like to. But it's a happy halfway house, I guess.
We talked about future projects just now, though. But I mean, besides the Dartmoor one, is there anything else that you've got coming up? Any ambitions over the next little while that you can tell us about?
Yeah, well, actually, I've got a new video coming out on Tuesday. It's something a little bit different. I was actually up in Snowdonia National Park a couple of weekends ago, and I spent the weekend with Nick Livesey, and we've made a documentary about Nick. So that was a real privilege, actually getting to spend the weekend with Nick, and we discussed so much more than just photography. Discussed his life, all the other things that make up Nick. So that's been a really interesting project, quite a hard one to edit as well, because
very Nick different to probably your it is
very different, and like I said, it's more than photography, but Nick gives everything, and therefore it's really hard to think, oh no, I can't take that bit out, but you have to be quite ruthless. So I like doing these types of projects. I did one with Chris a few months ago, did a little documentary about him, so I'm enjoying just kind of diversifying the types of video that I make as well, but still have a sort of a grounding in photography. So the Nick Livesey experience is what we called it. That comes out on Tuesday. So I'm really excited to have that out in the wild.
I love it. I mean, YouTube, obviously you're on YouTube. You mentioned this before. You've got your website as well. Just let people know where they can find you. What's your your handles on these various places?
Yeah, so you can always go to my home, which is julianbaird.com or julianbaird.me. They're both domains. So that's my website. And then across all the social platforms, I'm pretty well /jbairdexp for exposed. That was the name of my blog. So yeah, you can get me. But if you go to my website, links to everything there.
It's all on there. The importance of having a website, and it's brilliant. I would say it's one of the nicer websites that I've actually looked at over the past few months. Obviously, you know what you're doing, IT consultant that you are. Listen, that's about it. I think for now we've actually gone over time, which happens occasionally. But thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you to everybody, obviously, as well, that's been in the chat, and all the questions that you guys have poured in as well. If you do want to watch this again, then, as I said at the beginning, it'll be available right here on the Kase Filters UK YouTube channel, just shortly after we press the stop button. So you can feel free to watch that or share it or whatever you want to do with that. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. I think 2 weeks on the 11th of July. Is that 2 weeks? I think it is. With Jim Cossey. So looking forward to that one as well. You can check out kasefilters.com for all the upcoming Sunday sessions, and also to look back as well on any of the other photographers maybe you've missed. You can have a look on there. But I think that's about it from me and from Julian and from the whole team here. Thank you, Julian, as well. And thank you, as I said, to you guys for joining us tonight. So have a fantastic rest of your evening, and hopefully see you in a couple of weeks. Good night.
Bye.